I'm recording this just for my other class if anybody misses it. Then I'm going to sell it for millions of dollars.
As long as we get to share in part
Yeah.
of that profit.
Yeah, what's our cut? Oh,
Right now, I'm excited. This is all working. The technology's working.
I think
It's like a major miracle.
it's always good when the technology cooperates.
I know. Hi, Ellie. Okay.
hello.
Hello. All right, so I've got 2 students here so far.
Woohoo.
All right. So what you guys want to do is while they're talking, if you have questions, you guys have to either ask them or you ask them and tell me to, or
I can just join the Zoom here.
you don't have to. Yeah. No, you can just enjoy and listen. They're going to be on the back screen, are you? That's kind of how, I don't know how, there's probably a way to change that. I have no idea how.
No, he didn't. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, hold on. There's one people coming. There we go. All right.
Oh, it's too good.
All right. Hi, Gareth. Hi, Alicia. Welcome. We have guest speaker today, 2 guest speakers, so we're pretty excited about that for you guys. That's Becca and Aaron. So you guys have to help think of questions. And your goal is to put at least one question in the chat, or you can interrupt and ask them at any time. Right.
Sounds of me drinking.
That's too great. Love it.
Getting there. Slowly but surely. All right, Hamaresh.
Hey, Mr. Gallagher.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. A little bit tired.
Okay, don't fall asleep.
Don't worry, I won't. I love our city forest. I've actually been there quite a couple times.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Becca and Aaron? Have you met them before?
They look very familiar.
Especially
But-
with the masks on, right?
Yeah. It's because of the masks. Yeah, but I had really fun time at our city forest. We did the mulch gathering and created soil, and planted pots and helped the plants in the nursery, and yeah, that was really fun. I absolutely loved it.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How long ago did you do that?
I first went in like 8th grade, and then during like high school, I did community service hours at our city forest a couple times. I think it was like last year I did at our city forest, and yeah, I absolutely love it. Really.
Glad to hear it.
Good. All right, we are waiting for a few more for the 18. We'll wait another minute to make sure we're all here. So we have guest speakers. I'd appreciate it if you turn your camera on, if you are able, just to be good neighbors and be nice to people who come and speak to us. That would be awesome. They can see how smart you are just from looking at your faces.
Of course.
We are,
Let's do that too.
we're missing 3, missing 2. With 1 more minute. Okay, one of the things that I'm going to want you to do, and I have great faith in you as a class. Don't tell anybody, but you're my favorite class ever. Okay.
It's every
You said
class.
it to every class.
No, I never say that to anybody else. What are you talking about? Here's what I'd like you to do today is I'd like every person while you're listening to this presentation, I'd like you to, chat in a question, or you could just boldly unmute yourself and ask a question, because one of the things we've been talking about is finding your community partner, finding an agency, people who are helping other people or a church, wherever. So our City Forest is a great organization that does a lot of great things in our community. And Becca and Aaron today, they're going to talk about what our City Forest does, but they're also going to really talk about why they do it. Why just plant trees? There's got to be a reason. So especially for you who are considering your project to be around climate change or pollution or our urban forest, you guys might want to pay really good attention to them. They also said they'd be open for you guys emailing them and asking them questions, because that's going to be one of the assignments coming up as we head toward the end of the semester, is for you to interview somebody like Becca or Aaron, and ask them why they do what they do and what they're, what do they think is important, why they're doing it. So here they go. I'm going to have them go ahead and start. During the class, your goal is to chat a question, and if I look at it, I'll ask it, or again, you can ask it, but you have to do that. That's part of your participation points for today, and I have great faith in all of you. All right, so Aaron and Becca, take it away. Thank you so much for being here, and this is period 5.
Awesome. No, thank you guys for having us on. We really appreciate the opportunity to share who we are and what we do. So we both work for Our City Forest, which is San Jose's leading urban forestry nonprofit. And my name is Erin, and I'm the outreach coordinator here at OCF. And
my name is Becca. I am the coordinator for the volunteer department. And we're gonna just dive into what our City Forest is about a little bit here. So just to give you an introduction, if you've never heard of our City Forest before, like Aaron said, we do work in urban forestry. And one of the main aspects of that, we have kind of a lot of different teams, but one of the main aspects of what we do is build up the urban forest throughout Santa Clara County. And one way that we do that is by planting trees. We can do a large variety of different tree plantings. So in some cases, it's just helping residents choose the right tree at our community nursery to plant at their own home. We can plant trees at people's homes. We've planted trees at parks. We planted trees at schools, other public places. We partner with a lot of different organizations, government, and grants to spread out trees throughout the entire urban forest. We've been around since 1994. So if you look on the slide, you'll see all those green dots are trees that we planted between 1994 and 2014. So it's somewhere over 90,000 at this point, just since we've been open. So there's even more little green dots that we've had a hand in planting out in the community, which is awesome and something that we're really proud of. One thing that we're really proud of too is we don't just plant trees though, we also take care of them, which helps us have a really, really high success rate for trees that are going to grow and establish themselves and lead long, thriving, healthy lives. And there's kind of just a few main aspects of caring for a tree after it's planted. One thing that you want to do is make sure that the roots are growing downward and deep and establishing themselves so that that tree has a great root structure to survive. So we do watering with a lot of our trees. We do some stakes, when we plant them, we have stakes to support the tree as it grows, and we'll adjust those systems as the tree grows and branches start growing out. We do a little bit of pruning as well on young trees, just to make sure that they're growing in a way that's not only healthy for them, but conducive to growing in an urban environment. So those are all things that we'll do for about 3 years while the tree is establishing itself in its new home. In addition to that, though, we don't just want to plant trees and put them out there. We want to engage with the community, and we want to build up an urban forest that everybody is proud of, wants to take care of. The more people that are working towards this goal, the better. So we do a lot of outreach. Like Erin mentioned, she's the coordinator for that. We do a lot of education programs. We host workshops for various topics. Like, for example, we have one coming up this month about how to make more fire-resistant landscapes. So we'll invite members of the public to either join us in person or virtually and learn about something to help build up the urban forest as well. And for every tree that we plant, usually goes along with somebody will be the main point person to care for that tree. So not only are we getting a tree planted, but we're teaching entire new groups and generations of people how to properly care for trees and why they're important, which is a huge part of our ultimate goal. So just really quick to touch on what an urban forest is. The urban forest is pretty much all of the living things that are going to live in an urban area. So the trees, the animals, the people, we're all a part of the urban forest here in San Jose. And it can be a little bit tough for trees to grow in an urban area. If you think about it, there's usually a high amount of people and a high amount of infrastructure, which leaves very little space for trees that are normally used to growing over great spaces and rooms and branching out. So it is limited to what kinds of trees we can plant and things like that. We have to be really careful where we plant trees. It's gonna affect underneath the ground. So are there utility lines? Is it gonna grow up and reach where the power lines are? Those are all things that have to be taken into account, as well as personal preference. We're planting trees where there are lots of people and oftentimes in people's yards. So they're gonna have preferences on what they want their tree to look like, or not drop leaves or not drop fruit. All of those things have to come into account. Whereas when you're looking at a natural forest, you just have more space. Trees and plants just naturally grow without many limits. There's very little human impact. The human impact has a huge effect on the urban forest in San Jose, especially when it comes to choosing trees. People tend to pick just a few types of trees, but one thing that we want to focus on is making sure that we build up a very diverse urban forest.
Yeah, so just as Becca explained, we want to ensure that we're creating a biodiverse ecosystem out here in San Jose. And the reason why that's so important is because the more variety that you have within an ecosystem, so basically the more types of species that you're planting, the more able the ecosystem is able to fight against threats that could potentially damage or hurt the ecosystem. So these threats can be things like disease. And yeah, so like if you have a certain species that is susceptible to a specific disease and can be taken out by that disease, if you have a biodiverse ecosystem, it's able to bounce back a lot faster, and the other species can adapt and make up for the species that was lost from the threat. Whereas if you have a less diverse ecosystem, it's a lot harsher on the whole, and the whole ecosystem suffers from the threat more so. And an example that I like to give is the American chestnut tree. This tree was insanely popular throughout the East Coast prior to 1950. And there were about 4 billion of them throughout the entire East Coast. And unfortunately, around the 1950s, this fungus called chestnut blight came in from Asia. It was imported over here, and it took out practically every single American chestnut tree that we had on the East Coast. And even to this day, this fungus is still thriving. And so you won't find very many mature American chestnut trees on the East Coast. And so that's an example of why we want to plant like a biodiverse ecosystem, because we don't want something such as disease to come in and take out, 50% or more of the trees that we have in San Jose. And so some of the most common ones that we have out here are the crepe myrtle and the Chinese pistache. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with tree species, but you'll see these everywhere. They're like practically on every street corner, and residents love them, especially the crepe myrtle. And so we really try to get out and educate our community on like why it's important to plant trees beyond just these species and how they can help us protect the biodiversity within San Jose.
So Aaron, we've got a couple questions already about you talk about those trees. What do you plant the most of? What do you find you're spending most of your time doing in this area?
Yeah. So we actually carry around 800 different tree species at our nursery alone. And so as Becca mentioned, you have to be mindful of the space that you're going to put a tree in. And so we have a variety of like small to large size trees. And we just choose which type based on like either residents' preference or whatever grant we have. They sometimes give us specifics on which species they want us to plant. But then also we really do try to focus on natives. So that's what I was going to go into here is it's really important to plant native species because it's vital to the health of the ecosystem. These species are already adjusted to living in the area, and they act as natural hosts to other endemic species in the area as well. And so they just fully bring up the health of the ecosystem. So we really do try to focus on planting native trees. And here are some examples of ones that we like. The coast live oak, scientific name is Quercus agrifolia. And this is one of the fastest growing oak trees because oak trees are known for being pretty slow growing. And this tree is notable for its like smaller leaves that are pretty spiny on the tips. And I'm sure you all have seen some. They're around in the city, and then also if you head out into the hills. Another one is the California buckeye, which is Aeschylus californica. It's also commonly known as the horse chestnut tree. And this tree is summer deciduous. So that means that it loses its leaves in the summertime. So it will look like it's dead. So a lot of residents will like think that their tree is dead and try to cut it down. And we have to inform them that it's like, in fact, just an adaptation by this tree. And it's still thriving, still healthy, doing well. It has some pear-shaped fruit, and this fruit is poisonous. And like a fun fact is that native tribes from the area used to use the juice from the fruit on their hunting tools to help them kill prey, which is pretty cool. Some other trees that we like that are native as well are the valley oak, which is Quercus lobata. This is one of the oldest living oak species in the area. This particular tree we don't love planting on streets or in park strips, mainly because it is a very large tree and it has pretty long horizontal limbs, and they can kind of get in the way of, streets or wires, overhead wiring, just citizens walking down sidewalks. So you won't really find them in the actual centers of the city, but if you head to parks or more open spaces, that's where you'll be able to find them. And especially if you're out hiking and you go out into the hills of California, they're everywhere. And then we also have, lastly, this California sycamore, which is Platanus racemosa. This is a really fast growing tree. It can grow more than 2 feet per year. And it has a hybrid called the London plane tree that we have all throughout San Jose. It's another one of those popular common trees that people love. we really like to try to promote the planting of the California sycamore in replacement of the London plane tree, because the California sycamore is a native, and it's just better for the environment out here. Beyond trees, though, we also want to give some light to our shrubs. We have a ton of native shrubs at our community nursery. Some of the popular ones are California sagebrush, which is Artemisia californica. It has a really nice scent, and is commonly referred to as cowboy's cologne. Again, you can find it all throughout the chaparral climate that we have. The next one is hummingbird sage, which is Salvia spathacea. This is a pollinator attractor, and it's a real favorite to hummingbirds, and it has really nice flowers that bloom from March till May. Computer. We have yarrow, which is commonly known or scientifically known as Achillea millefolium californica, which is the white variety that you see below. And then the rosea is the pink variety. Millefolium refers to 1,000 leaves, and it just kind of means because this plant has a ton of clusters of these little flowers. That's kind of like what it refers to. And then lastly, we have Manzanita arctostaphylos. There's a ton of different varieties of Manzanita, and they're everywhere. It's a great, pretty large shrubby bush, and they're most notably known for their peely red bark that they have. So if you're ever out hiking and you see a shrub that has peely red bark, it's probably a Manzanita.
All right, we got a question here with Nikhil.
When they're all planted, are they planted like really small at first, and then like you let them grow for a long time, or do some of them like start later?
Yeah, so we carry a couple different sizes at our nursery, but it's better to plant them when they're small because they have more time to grow and root out into the new space. And the shock of the transplant from the pot to the actual like ground soil is not as severe as when they're older and like feeling more established. So it actually is better to plant them when they're smaller.
And there's some other questions, but I think you guys are going to kind of hit on them as we go. So I'm going to let you keep going, and then I'll come back. You guys are asking really good questions. So there we go.
Yeah, these are great.
Awesome. We love it. Yeah, so we'll start diving into the why we feel so passionate about trees. I mean, a lot of us are huge plant nerds and nature nerds anyways, but there are a lot of benefits of having all of these native trees and having a healthy urban forest. So we'll take a look at those benefits right now. So trees have a lot of just intrinsic value in the way that they support the ecosystem, which is great in and of itself. They're going to provide habitats for animals, pollinators. A lot of trees provide food, and then all trees provide air cleaning qualities. But there's some really cool extra benefits that I didn't realize before working with our city forests, but they're really, really helpful to urban settings. So for example, trees provide shade, which is something that we know, and there's nothing quite as nice on a hot day of finding a nice shady tree to help cool it off. But beyond that, if you strategically place trees to grow like around your yard or around buildings, they can actually help reduce the amount of heat from sunlight that comes into your homes. And then you don't have to spend as much money on air conditioning. And then on the reverse of that, it provides insulation in the winter as well. So it can help save costs on utilities. They also act as a sound and wind barrier, so helping to cut down some of the urban air or sound pollution, protect your homes against higher winds. Going to the psychological side of it, there have been a lot of studies about what happens to a community when you have healthy green spaces. And it's actually been shown that when you have an urban forest and you have these green spaces, oftentimes those areas have reduced crime rates and higher property values as well. Shopping areas see this effect too. If you're, like a strip mall, but you have trees and landscaping and green spaces, it has been shown that people will spend more money at those shopping areas. So trees really do just improve mental health in general. If you build up this beautiful space and you take care of it, other people want to continue taking care of it. So trees are a good way to promote that. On top of that, the number one thing you hear with trees as a benefit is they are a huge sink for carbon dioxide. So when you have rainforests, those are some of the areas of the world that are pulling the most carbon dioxide out of the air. So when we incorporate that into our cities, we get that benefit of trees filtering out the air for us, which I know it's been a weird few months here. We can definitely understand the need for having something that's going to filter and clean the air for us. So carbon dioxide is something we talk about a lot, and I'm sure that you all are familiar with it, but just as like a little quick review, it is a greenhouse gas. Greenhouse gases are important to our climate as they help trap heat from the sun to warm the earth. But when we see such rapidly rising carbon dioxide emissions, it throws off the balance that our ecosystem has, which is why when you talk about climate change, you're seeing all of these strange things happen, and it's happening at such a higher rate because we are trapping so much carbon dioxide. So trees can help counteract that. The other thing that we see in urban areas is something called the urban heat island effect, which is a very fascinating effect. But essentially, if you were to take an urban center and then a nearby rural area and look at the differences in temperature between them, those urban areas can be up to 10 degrees hotter than the rural areas. This is for a lot of reasons. So you'll see on the graphic here, there's a lot of different factors that contribute to it, but compared to rural areas where you would have rivers and grass and lots of space and trees and plants, in a city, you're usually going to have a lot more asphalt and concrete. You're going to have buildings made of like reflective materials. You have a lot more people, you have a lot fewer trees, and all of this essentially just traps the heat in those urban centers. So absolutely fascinating concept. But right now, because we have changes with the climate and greenhouse gases rising, and we see this urban heat island effect, it can lead to cities being extremely hot. So that's one thing that we're trying to counteract with planting trees and trying to break up these urban areas with trees that are going to provide benefits for us. Because the more trees that we have, they're going to be one of the best ways to combat climate change. So in California specifically, looking at the local area, there's two big concerns as climate starts getting warmer and drier, the more you move up. California, when you talk about climate change, you hear about melting polar ice caps and rising sea levels, which can lead to a higher danger of flooding in all sorts of coastal areas, bay areas. So that's something that is a big concern. And then this year is more proof than anything that it can lead to much more damaging wildfires. And you can see kind of just a comparison of how the climate has changed just locally in California. It's getting warmer, it's getting drier. So the more we can do now to help prevent these things in the future, the better. And we want to make sure that we're taking into account that everybody is affected by these issues, and therefore everybody should be able to benefit from the things that we're trying to do here at our city forest.
So as Becca just mentioned, we want to really ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to live in a healthy environment. Climate change actually affects some groups of people a lot more than others. So going back to the wildfire season, some people who are able to pay for wildfire suppression services, which can be anything from like tree trimming to brush removal, will often do so. And so they receive the benefit of having those services given to them. And this isn't necessarily just like individuals paying, it's often like neighborhood associations or things like that. Wealthier neighborhoods will get that wildfire suppression service, whereas neighborhoods that don't have enough money to pay for that will not. And so that's kind of how you see that unequal distribution playing out. We really, as an organization, want to try to ensure that everybody is receiving the same benefit. And that's what the whole meaning of environmental justice is, that everybody has equal opportunity to live in a healthy environment, regardless of how much money they make, their race, their class, or any other socioeconomic factor. Some other examples that we'd like to give based on statistics is that it's more likely for a toxic waste site to be found in a low-income neighborhood. There's higher pollution levels near communities of color. There's more chemical plants next to underfunded schools. And lastly, there are fewer green spaces in lower income regions. So that's the one that we as an organization really try to target and help these communities fight back against environmental injustice. And so this picture depicts San Jose, Santa Clara County, and it's divided up into low income versus high income areas. And on top of that includes canopy coverage. So that's like the number of trees in each area. So as you can see on the left of the map, it's darker green, and that's because there's more trees on that side, and that's a wealthier neighborhood. Whereas if you move more to the East Bay, or East Side, I guess, it turns into that lighter color, and that means there's less canopy coverage, AKA less trees. So if we remember all of the benefits of trees that Becca talked about, there's lower crime rates or better mental health for everyone. We really want to make sure that we're providing all of those benefits for everybody who lives in San Jose. So one of the ways that we try to help is to plant trees in these lower income neighborhoods that have already a lower canopy coverage. So we just actually wrapped up a grant from CAL FIRE that was for 8,000 trees we ended the grant on January 1st of 2020, but it was to plant trees on this east side of San Jose. So in the lighter green areas is where we tried to plant the 8,000 trees. And that was to offer these communities the best benefits that they could get as well from just having more green spaces. But on top of planting trees in these disadvantaged communities, we also try to plant for free for people who have disabilities and also for senior citizens. So if you live anywhere within Santa Clara County and you have a disability or you're a senior citizen, you can come to us and we will plant the trees for you for free.
So a lot of great things, but as you can see, there's a lot of different kind of buckets our city forest has their hands in, and that's why it's so important to get help from community members just like you all. So if you're thinking of how you might be able to help, there's a lot of things that you can do. When you talk about all of these conservation and building up the urban forest and climate change, those are all usually kind of very big, scary things to talk about, but little differences from a lot of people are going to be the things that help change it. So if you're just looking to learn more about the trees around you, that's a great way to get started in helping out the urban forests. The more we talk about the benefits of trees, the more people learn about them, the more people are passionate about helping out with that cause. So even if you just want to help by getting out and learning about the trees around you, that's a great place to start. But we do have a lot of exciting volunteer opportunities as well if you want to get involved with our city forest directly. So my email is up on the screen here. And if we need to later, we can also share it. But we host work days at our nursery so you can learn about how to grow plants from the beginning stages, from seed all the way up, and help with our team there. We do community planting, so you can come out and help us plant a tree. We do outreach events. We do all sorts of things that we need volunteers for, and we would love to have you all if you are interested in joining. We also offer a program for volunteers called Tree Amigos, which is basically just a 5-week volunteer class where you learn in depth about each of our teams. And then at the end of it, you're designated a Tree Amigo, which means you're a more experienced volunteer. You spent the time with our organization. And as you get comfortable volunteering, you can actually help coach and lead other volunteers that are starting out with the organization just at first. So kind of a cool opportunity to get not only volunteer hours, but a little bit of leadership experience. Even beyond that, what's really cool about our city forest is they have a partnership with AmeriCorps, which AmeriCorps, if you've never heard of it, it's just a nationwide service organization. So you're designated as a volunteer and you are given a living stipend. So you're not truly just volunteering, but you work at a nonprofit like our city forest. That's the program that Aaron and I are a part of. So we've actually come here specifically to work with our city forest for 11 months. And you gain experience working with this nonprofit network, which is really fascinating. In addition to all of the experience that you get and all the cool things you get to do, you also earn an education stipend that can be applied towards future going to college, going to grad school, or getting different certificates with educational organizations. So it's a great way to gain experience and kind of set yourself up for the future. What brought me to our city forest specifically is I actually lived in Florida and was doing environmental education at Disney down there, but I found our city forest and this AmeriCorps program, and I was really inspired by the work that they do, planting trees, connecting with the community. And so it was really great to have an opportunity to come and work with this organization through AmeriCorps. It's something I was really excited about.
Yeah. And then I graduated from university out here, and I was looking for environmental entry-level positions. And our city forest came up with the AmeriCorps opportunity, and it just seemed like a great fit, especially for receiving that education award. It was $10,000 last year, and then this year I think it's gone down a little bit, but regardless, like you can use that money for tuition, to pay off student loans. So it's super helpful for completing higher education. And it's just a really awesome environment and experience to get to earn like professional, I guess, like career experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got some questions. Let me ask you guys some questions. Let me just interrupt. So somebody asked, what do you think the biggest challenges that our city forest faces in trying to do this work?
Yeah, well, this year is definitely a little bit different because of pandemic. But like setting that aside, I think our biggest challenge would probably be ensuring that we have all the funding that we need. We do receive grants, and we pretty consistently come across grants to help us plant trees, but it doesn't set aside much money for the organization itself. And sometimes that can be a challenge because we need to upkeep our technology or have extra funding for just like other opportunities that we want in ways we can expand our organization. And sometimes that can be a challenge. Yeah.
How do you choose again where the trees are planted? I mean, you had the one grant for the east side. How do the people get selected, or how does that work?
So it's totally based on whoever is providing the grant. They work with the city, who helps them define what areas are in need. So this past one specifically with CAL FIRE, I'm forgetting the name of the tool that they use to figure out what areas of San Jose they needed to plant trees in. But basically, they just mapped out our city and realized this is where we want to focus. These are the lower income neighborhoods with the lower canopy coverage. And CAL FIRE was interested and decided to provide us that funding. So yeah, it's definitely just based on pretty much the city regulations and whoever is providing the grant as well.
Somebody asked a question about soil erosion. The question is soil erosion ever a problem? Where do you see that, and how do trees maybe benefit the soil by planting trees?
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to having trees in reducing soil erosion. I would say as far as soil problems that we come across, there's just some challenging soils to dig and plant trees in. But the trees themselves can help with those issues a lot, not only just preventing soil erosion, but also retaining water and preventing storm runoff. So planting the trees is going to help secure the soil more. It's also going to bring more water into that soil so that other plants, animals can thrive, and it produces or prevents more water pollution because the storm water, rather than just running off, gets brought down into the tree and into the soil too.
Yeah.
That answers the question. Yeah.
It's like there's a common misconception that like you don't want to plant trees during a drought because you have to water them, but it actually is the opposite. We really do want to plant trees in a drought because when you don't have trees, your soil becomes really hard and dry. And so all of that water runoff is just not being soaked into the material. And so we're not gaining any of the nutrients from that soil or from the water. And we're not replenishing our water stores in the ground below. And so we actually really do want to plant trees in droughts to prevent that from happening because they break up the hard soil. And they do prevent soil erosion as well, as Becca touched upon. So that's a great question though.
Yeah, somebody asked, is there a disadvantage to planting trees? Can you plant too many trees?
I would love to say that there are no disadvantages in an ideal world. That would be the only things that I would think of that can be seen as disadvantages or that we see are just kind of the opposite of like the benefits. There are streets and there's sidewalks and there's clearances that trees have to make so that all of these cars and these humans can pass underneath them. There's power lines and things like that. So trees can interfere with like utility lines and things like that.
Yeah.
So as far as disadvantages, that's kind of what I would say. But
and yeah, to go off of that, like unfortunately, a lot of our urban city planners are not as well informed on the types of trees that need to be planted in the right space. And they don't project into the future of what we really need for our urban like forest and everything to survive well. And so we do happen to have a lot of trees put in spots that aren't necessarily conducive for them. And they aren't able to survive and thrive into the long term. And so it's not providing us the best benefits that we can get. So if there is like a negative, it would be that it's on our end, that we are not doing the best part to ensure that our forest survives.
Yeah. There's one question too, during the quarantine, are there opportunities to physically go and volunteer at the nursery and just wanted some clarification and maybe talk a little bit about, so, when the volunteers are, how long a shift can you go for? Things like that.
Absolutely. So we are hosting in-person volunteer opportunities with quite a few of our teams. We do have protocols in place, limited availability. So we limit how many volunteers can be on site at a time and require social distancing, face masks, and all of those things to make sure that safety is top in mind. We typically have 3-hour shifts for volunteers with each of our teams. So on the nursery team, you can actually volunteer on Wednesdays and Thursdays currently from 9 to 12. For our community planting team, they typically hold plantings on Saturdays from around 8:45 to 12. We have an education center that's located in Marshall Cottle Park, if you've ever been there, and we're doing a lot of work to care for the trees that we've planted there and build up that education center so that we can host some really great classes and workshops. So we do have in-person volunteer opportunities, like I said, with protocols in place to make sure that we're being as safe as possible.
That's great. Okay, anybody else want to get on the question bandwagon here? I've got, I think, about 9 of 10 of you who've written a question. Who else wants bonus points, gold star points for the day? And then I was trying to think of a question too. For this class, we talk about partnering with other agencies like our city forest. So could you see somebody maybe partnering with you to kind of do one of those tree plantings, if Valley Christian plants trees or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. we've partnered with schools in the past and had some really successful tree plantings completed. So if that's something that you would like to kind of create for your school, then you can most definitely reach out to us and we can set that up.
Nice. Do you guys hear that? For some of you who especially are, you know, kind of are passionate about making some changes, this might be good. Do you have to get a grant every time you plant the trees?
No. Yeah, we don't always need a grant to plant the trees.
For when we have like residential plantings, typically what happens is the resident gives us a donation for the tree itself, but then they're able to plant the tree in their yard on their own. So there's a lot of cases that we don't always need a grant, but grants are definitely nice.
The grants help because they provide us like subsidized plantings, but yeah, as like when we have residents plant, those residents are paying for the planting and all the service themselves. So yeah.
Somebody want to know, is anybody welcome to volunteer? Is it a supportive environment for volunteers? And is there an age limit?
Yes. We love volunteers. Anything that you're able to come out and help us with or anything that you're passionate about, we would love to have you. We do have remote volunteering options too. So there's truly something for everybody if you want to get involved in our organization. As far as age limits, we accept volunteers of all ages. As long as you're over 13, you're able to volunteer on your own. If you're under 18, you have to have a parent or guardian consent form. And there are a few opportunities that are limited to 18 and above, but our nursery, our Urban Forestry Education Center, our community plantings, those are all open to volunteers of all ages.
Right. And then finally, is our city forest mostly just Santa Clara County, or does it go beyond Santa Clara County?
Yeah, so we've been just planting in Santa Clara County for, I guess, like the past 20 years. And then this year we actually recently received a grant to expand into Sunnyvale and Mountain View areas. And then also I think down all the way to Gilroy. So the grant is still in the works and we haven't necessarily started up with that particular like subsidized plantings and things like that. But yeah, we are expanding, which is really exciting.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, you're our last question. Go for it.
Do you think that trees in certain areas need more like human attention, or do you think they're pretty self-sufficient and we should just let them be?
Attention students. Please remember to socially distance in the hallways and stairwells during the passing period. Also, please remember to enter the buildings 6 feet apart and use the stairwells in a single file formation. Thank you and have a great day.
Wait, did you guys get that? All right. You understand?
I forgot.
Okay, wait. Let me say it again, just in case you didn't hear it. Okay, answer that last question. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So I believe it was just something about, is it easier in some areas for trees to be left alone? I think that's definitely true for non-urban areas
Yes.
and non-drought areas, but because of all of the humans, once again, all of the human impact, we do give more attention to the trees in these areas to make sure that they grow in a way that they can continue to grow and live throughout their life.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's great. We'll end with that. Thanks everybody so much. I'll see you at class tomorrow. And yeah, thanks. All right. Thanks,
Bye,
Becca.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Becca, Aaron, I've got to change rooms. So I'm going to get off, then I've got to go next door and then I'll open up the room again. Okay.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. See you everybody.
Bye.